Howdy there, Victoria 3 fans. It's me, Dean Webb again, talking about mods and getting my face washed out from all the brightiness coming off of the screen here. Yes, I've updated my blog, and the link will be below this video in the description for my mod list. Now, if you'd rather have the JSON file, I've got that as well, but I'm using this web page and I don't have to use a text file after that because this updates the numbering all automatically. The text file, I have to change all the numbers whenever I change a mod order, and that's just yuck. So I want to talk about the mods I got and why I got them. And well, to do that, I'll just click over here. Hey, oh, that's better for my skin tone overall. I didn't change the first 49 mods. Those are the same as I had in previous videos, so don't worry about it. But there's now a new tax system here in the Great Revision. The old one is outdated. The new one is here, and the AI is capable of using it. So the old one, just the player could do. The new one, the AI will be able to do and gets much more incremental. Yes, I know for some reason Paradox doesn't want us to have little slider bars, but here we are, we're sliding towards sliders. What this does is allows for incremental changes in your tax system. So you can go up 0.5% or 1.5%. I mean, yeah, it's great. It's great that way. Now, some caveats with it in that some of these changes look like they're going to be a little blind, at least at first, until you get used to what's involved in it. And you may have to take notes on how you increase or decrease a tax, what that does to your economy. And you may not be able to just leave it on pause and see what happens to the green or red number on the top of the screen. You may have to let it run and watch the change kick in and then decide the next day, okay, I need to do this. So implement them gradually. I know historically we passed a law that was a sweeping measure, but yeah, okay. Do your sweeping measure over a period of a few days. You'll still sweep. I mean, it takes less than a year. You'll still sweep, but you want to watch it and get used to it before you start making huge swings in your economy left and right. So anyway, yeah. So I've gotten rid of the old text department one. So let me go ahead and now just knock it out. There we go. And now I don't have to talk about it anymore. So that's one I got rid of. Another one that I got that I took out was it was assimilation fixes. It was actually blocking a lot of assimilation, and I realized that's a mistake. And I get to that later on in one of the mods that I made. Yes, I'm a modder. I've got 4. But yeah, so I took that out. Another one that I found that was making problems with the mix of mods that I have was the stockpiling mod. Now, it may be working fine for you, and I think it's a great mod. I really want to see something like that in the game, but because of all the other things I've got going on, it was breaking some stuff. And you know, that's just the way it is. If you want it in your set, then you may have to figure out a couple of these that may be colliding with it that you decide you're going to drop in favor of the stockpile mod. But I did remove it with great respect to Anbelt, who I think is a fantastic modder. I really like this stuff. It's just that it was conflicting with my 89 other mods that I have here. Anyway, I continue, and I think everything. Oh wait, yeah, there is another great revision mod here. We go the colonial resettlement. This is interesting because you can now take people and say you're now going to the colonies. Yeah, give them the hard boot there. Then not much change here. Same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing. Don't know if I mentioned this before, but the Lepsius map is really cool to use if you have Morgenröte. And then I've got here this industry realism plus urban synergy plus Morgenröte compatch. This is so I can use all those mods together. And very big thanks to the industry realism mod author for putting that compatch together. Somebody though on my Discord, I call it a message board. That's how old I am. I still believe in message boards. Somebody on my server was saying, but I don't play with Morgenröte. I just want the industry realism and urban synergy compatch. Well, he made one, and there it is. So if you need that patch because you don't play with Morgenröte, there it is. You're welcome. and thanks to Agrarian Slot, that's the name there, for making the mod. You got it there. So if you need that, there it is. I don't need it, so I'm not using it. That's just how I roll there. Okay, so but I thought I'd mention it at this point. Then I keep scrolling down. I brought in save your CPU, saving that for the end game should I need it. That's the doom button that says, okay, that I'm tired of every year taking 7 minutes to run. We're doing this because it's going to change a lot of things in population and stuff. And I did have another mod that had it was cultural synergies and allowed things to merge together. Because I've got some other mods that are rather aggressive with assimilation just to reduce the total number of populations in the game. And I mean like populations of one, because there's just one Orthodox Ashkenazi iron worker, and then next door is another. There's one Orthodox Ashkenazi uh, tool worker, and I know you're thinking, wait, Orthodox Ashkenazi? Yeah, it can happen. Anyway, but so I'm more aggressive with assimilation, so I can actually get it down to where those single populations, instead of taking up multiple screens on the pops, now condense down, and I can actually have some nations where when I check their pop screen, we start with populations of 2 or 3, and the single guys are gone. This is good, and this is one of the mods I made. I get to that, but because I took out the cultural synergies mod and took out the assimilation rework or the assimilation tweaks, now I can have much better assimilation, and I don't know if I'm going to have to reach for save my CPU as often, but you never know. It's there if I need it. It's there if I need it. There are 2 new great migration mod or great revision mods that I've just added here. Migration agreement, which allows you to contract with another country to say, hey, bring your pops over here. I'll give you money. You give me people. It's going to be expensive, but you can do it. Now, caveat with that, they have to be, for them to actually move, they need to be accepted. This is not going to coerce a group into your country. And I would like to make a mod that would do that, where we could actually do the indentured labor market that was done to replace slavery across the British Empire and outside of it as well. There's a very nasty side of Victorian economics where they're all proud of how they got rid of slavery, chattel slavery, ownership of other people, but then they created other systems that technically weren't slavery. This is not slavery because we said so. But yeah, it's slavery. There's a lot of coercion and a lot of forced in there. But anyway, that's not this mod. This is one where if the population you're trying to recruit is already accepted in your country or very close to the top level acceptance, they'll thrive. They'll be fine. So if you're, say, Germany and you want to make a migration agreement, don't do it with Arabia. That's not going to happen. If you do it with England, they'll ship them over and they'll fit right on in. So there you are. And there's also AI's diplomatic plays. This does some cool stuff there. Check it out. It adds a little spice to the game. It's fun. Taylor, a great modder on my Discord, said, hey, I've got this Australia New Zealand flavor pack and with a compatibility patch for Morgan Road. Pop that in. And I don't usually play Australia, but if I can get flavor to where the country looks more realistic and that does more realistic stuff, so if I ever do interact with it, I'm interacting with it realistically. I don't always play America, but I still like to see how it expands and does the things that it does with Hail Columbia. It's really nice, and I don't always play in the Balkans, but but I do want to have that crazy stuff going on while I'm busy doing my other things. It adds that flavor. Well, this adds flavor for Australia. However, there was an issue where I was showing some other stuff and they noticed, hey, your map looks wrong. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm loading your mod. Isn't this how it's supposed to look? He says, no, it should look like Hail Columbia, but in Australia. Oh, well, I found out that I had another mod, Just Omani Kenya, which would stop the British invasion of East Africa or colonization of it early, like in 1836. Stop that. Well, Just Omani Kenya modifies the map. This also modifies the map. And if I load the one before the other or after, whichever one loads last wins. And so I couldn't have them both. But I wanted to stop the colonization. So to make it work, I wrote a mod, and we'll have more on that in a minute here. Okay, other ones I've added: Austria Explosion, or Austroplosion. This is what I'm looking at. I'm going to be working with Sasko on developing some additional great revision mods, looking at bringing journal entries and flavor to different parts of the world. And these would be ones where, yeah, if you turn them on, great. If you have them, if you don't have them, it's not going to kill anything. They should work on their own, and that if other people are updating everything else in the game, these stay insulated because they're just journal entries. Fingers crossed. But we're looking at trying to do something that will help Austria completely fall apart if it's pushed hard enough. And so I'm looking at this mod. I haven't played a lot of games with it yet. To tell you the truth, I took a break from Victoria 3 because I wanted to play Civ 7 and get my Baldur's Gate 3 run with Shadowheart done before patch 8 release. And well, I did that, and now I started one with Karlach. But anyway, so I hope I can get that done before patch 8 releases on that. But this is a Victoria 3 video. Let's talk about Victoria 3. Okay. But yeah, if I play some more games, I'm going to have this on, and I'm going to try to do things that, according to the mod, should cause Austria to fall apart. Now, granted, when I was testing it, I had loaded it into an already existing run. I need to start fresh, I think, for it to run properly. Then, this is what helped me with the mod I made. And the last four you see down here, these are the mods that I made. Less border gore, claim colonial status. I really like this one because once you colonize a state, if you're the first one there, you can push a button that will exercise a claim on there. The AI will do it automatically. It will exercise its claim. You need to get in there and you need to be there first, so you exercise your claim to a particular part of the world. And this was fantastic. Except in the very beginning of the game, if you had two colonies that were in the same spot, or let's say it was totally empty and two countries colonized it at the same time, then you would wind up with multiple nations having conflicting claims on that area, and that's just going to lead to more border gore. It does. This only works on on spots that are being colonized in the course of the game after 1836. So to fix it, I created pre-existing claims. He makes a mod. Yes, the kid does it. Let's take a look here. I'll go to my Steam browser. This is my workshop. Yay! First one I did was pre-existing claims. Then I did these other three. So let me go first to pre-existing claims. Okay, the point here is through the rest of the game, as new areas are colonized, we're fine. One guy gets there first, makes a claim. That's it. They're locked in. And they will fill out that area and they will hold that colony in perpetuity until somebody beats it out of them. So what I've done here is, instead of giving Oman land in Kenya, which can be messed up if somebody changes a map file, I just gave them a claim on Kenya. Now, if you want to colonize Kenya, you got two choices. One, beat up Oman and take the claim from them. Or two, wait for Oman to split apart and Zanzibar to become a nation, and then the claim disappears. Or if you just conquer Oman, you also make it disappear, and then you're in. For the other ones, I gave England a claim on Gambia because it did develop that area colonially. And then France, just everything else on the West African coast, starting with the Ivory Coast going around to Mauritania. So Togo is still open, and Niger Delta is open, Cameroon, everything in the Congo, that's wide open because nobody's there at the start. But this meant that France would get colonies where it had them historically, and no one else is going to try to weasel in and create these little tiny, oh my gosh, they just pebbles in my shoes. If, let's say, France is the only nation to have colonized the interior of, let's say, Windward Coast, but the Dutch and the British both took one little spot there. The amount of infamy just to liquidate those two things is way out of proportion to their size and importance. So let's just not let them in the first place. I'd like a mod that would let me to actually buy these little colonial claims, because I thought this is a nightmare having Denmark introduced as owning a wee tiny bit of India. Yes, that was historically accurate, but historically accurate in 1836 does not mean it's going to produce a historically accurate outcome, which was the British bought it off of Denmark because the Danish couldn't handle it anymore. There was like, well, they needed the money, they sold it off, and that was it. No, in the game, I've actually seen nations take over Denmark and then leverage that to take over their territory in India and then start blowing out chunks of India because they're going in by way of the little Danish colonies because they could beat them up where they couldn't beat up the British or the French or the Portuguese as easily. So we should be able to buy them. But I digress. So this is the first one I did. Pre-existing claims. It prevents border gore in Africa. I love it. Next one I did was losing my religion. Okay. First off, let me state for anybody who thinks, oh, that's a terrible thing to do in a game, cause it to become irreligious. Okay. We're not really getting rid of religions. And I am a very religious person, as people will attest to. I have openly held beliefs in various things. Anyway, but it's killing my game. And what does religion do in Victoria 3? It creates population groups that are going to rebel because their religion is not accepted. Okay. And do they also tend to usually have cultures that aren't accepted? Yes. Well then, you know, let's clean it out there, because again, if I've got somebody who's Ashkenazi and Orthodox and Ashkenazi and Jewish, and by the way, saying that they're Jewish, that just papers over a lot of variety within the Jewish community. There are lots of different ways to be Jewish. We'll just say that. Anyway, but if you're Ashkenazi and Orthodox and Ashkenazi and Jewish, if the nation doesn't accept the Ashkenazi, it doesn't matter what religion they are. Let's just try to merge the Ashkenazi pops and just say you hated because the government doesn't like you, right? Or the same notion. What if you have a Northern Italian Catholic and a Northern Italian Protestant? They're still Northern Italian. Let's merge them up. I don't care. And what this does is it takes. I even put the code in here. The conversion rate is massive. I think minimum conversion is 1 million because I wanted that to happen. It will convert it'll also assimilate more aggressively than the regular game. And when I did this, it consolidated these tiny, tiny, tiny populations of one that are being tracked by the game for all their behaviors. And as soon as I get rid of that long tail of single person populations and they're all merged into 3 or 4 or 5, it just improves performance. There are just fewer total pops to mess with in the game. Religion doesn't do anything in Victoria 3. It does a lot in Europa Universalis 4 in like at the middle of the game. Then it's not so important afterward. But in Victoria 3, it's just a nothing burger. And where's religion in Hoi 4? Come on. It just ain't there. And because like, well, it doesn't really mean the nations are the nations. They don't really care about what you believe. Honestly, they're more worried about like your birth certificate and stuff like that. Yeah, they were. So let's have that just gone out of there, and it makes it run faster there. And in fact, those rebellions that were starting because of religion, how many of them actually took over a country? None. So, or in my experience, like none of them worked. So, boom, you stomp them, and then they get their revenge later on by grinding your CPU to a halt. So, let's get rid of that. Next mod I did was mini obsessions. I did this just because I was having fun. Well, I was trying to fix the economy in the game, which I'm glad to say is now a waste of time because of the changes that are coming up in the diary, the developer diary. Many obsessions here creates additional obsessions. The limit in the game is 3. This says, get rid of that limit, let it go up to 10, and increase the frequency of how often obsessions happen. Now you can go into your goods files and make more things obsessions. This doesn't touch it. It only looks at defines. does not touch the goods files. So if you're saying, well, I have this mod, but people aren't becoming obsessed to coal, what's wrong? Well, coal is not an obsession good. Sorry, But you can go in and you can edit your own files, and if you're building out your own economy mod, you can do that. Just be careful about other, how other mods are accessing the goods files, and that you don't step on them if you plan to make them work. Anyway, but yeah, this will make more obsessions happen, just because why not? Let's really live it up here and have more demand going on, especially for things like coffee. Come on. How is Brazil going to finish its River of Coffee journal if the only people obsessed with it in Europe are the Danes? No, they're too small. They're not going to get they're going to get a trickle of coffee. You need England. You need Spain. You need Germany. You need Austria. You need all these places on board with it. And frankly, the English got tea, so they're not going to have. Anyway, next one I did: more people, more problems. Because as I was working on the economy, it was frustrating to see me work with all these numbers. Like, okay, well, we'll have factories that employ fewer people, and all that did was, by setting it up to where factories employed like a fifth of the normal group, it wound up meaning that instead of running out of population in 1875, I ran out of pops in 1900. You'd still run dry on peasants and unemployed. So I thought, all right, boom, let's get more people. Now, I do have it set to where it will increase the death rate potential as well. So you can have, I can give, I can take away. I just up the maximum birth rate and the maximum death rate, and I also worked with. I actually lowered the minimum birth rate, but increase the minimum death rate. So if you're at minimum birth rate and minimum death rate, you're gonna have people dying. You need to do something about your birth rate, folks. You need to fix that up because otherwise they're gonna die. But this will, by reducing by letting the maximum birth rate increase. I played with numbers so that way it didn't come out ridiculous. But you're just going to have more people. And maybe you still run out in 1929-ish, but you're towards the end of the game at that point. You're ready to hit your CPU saver button, and you're waiting for the flavor that says Great Depression time and make everybody unemployed, but that comes later. This is, it just makes more people happen, so you don't have to go and conquer China because you need to start building radio factories in Württemberg. Not that that happened to me, but this makes it to where you are going to be able to sustain your industrial growth with your native-born population through the vast majority of the game. You just got to have more birth rate. Is it historical? Well, you asked that question. Let's take a look at the Victoria 3 economic system, shall we? Because it turns out in the latest dev diary, they say right here, we're going to start over from scratch. The economy thing is not really realistic. We're not happy with it. Let's just junk it. So there's your realism right there. What are they going to bring in? A world market. Yay! I'm glad. I know it's not just because I was asking for it, but this is something that makes sense. And the way they're talking about this working is this is going to act as a way for, if you overproduce in a country, it goes for sale on the world market. If you underproduce something in a country but need it, you turn to the world market to pull it in. And this could do a lot towards helping the whole like late game hundreds of thousands of tools with nobody to use them. It might make that go away, I think. And that would be a good thing, because then if your prices are impacted by world market prices, then it'll mean like you won't overproduce something. And maybe my mod that makes people more employ, or makes more people to employ, won't be needed because the game will actually be shutting down factories that aren't profitable and opening up ones that are. So I like that. The other thing that this would do, and through all the explanation they have here with trade centers and stuff, and I like their little icon here for Merchant Marine. It's a ship with an MM on it. I see you. And their symbol for import and exports is IM and EX. So obviously, work in progress. They're still scratching things out in pink. But the idea here that if you have ports and you've built your trade network, your merchant marines, you can, if you're a small country, you don't have to be in a larger trade network to sell your stuff to other countries, because that's the way it's been. Like, hey, I'm playing Brazil. I built coffee, and no one's buying the stuff. But uh, well, you just join the British market, yeah, and have them turn me into the colony of Brazil. No, thank you. This is going to help with it. This should make it more viable to play a minor country without being party to a larger bloc. You can still exist independently. You may have other struggles, but at least this will help. Oh, and by the way, my population mod, you're still going to run out of them if you're a really tiny country. So sorry. I I play great powers, and if the great powers have enough stuff at the end, I'm happy with that. If Greece runs out of people, well, sorry, Greece, you should have been bigger. That's just how it is. But this should help. This should help. And if it does help, then that could mean play if you are able to run Greece and make it economically profitable and draw immigrants in, they will be able to work in factories that will actually make money selling stuff in the world market. And it should also allow for long-term established trades, because the way the game was set up is like, hey, I'm going to make this trade and it's going to be good for a week, and then suddenly Mappy changes and I don't need to import that anymore. This would make it where I could focus on building out one type of thing and then import another type of thing, another good that I'm not going to make locally, and have some kind of comparative advantage going on. And I know comparative advantage can be debated, but the general principle that if a nation is good at making something, like Brazil is making coffee, they're really good at making coffee, way better than Norway. When's the last time you had a Norwegian roast? Aha, gotcha. But Brazil, yeah, you want Brazilian coffee, not that Norwegian crap. And let's just not even talk about Icelandic coffee. Yeah. But if you're really good at making that, you should be able to, focus on exporting that. And this is where we get a lot of, this is what happened in a lot of Latin American economies, that they weren't part of a huge empire, but they still became focused on exporting a single good or a single range of raw material goods, and then importing much of the manufactured goods that these may have gone into producing. And that left them economically dependent upon other powers like England, France, or the United States, generally speaking. And there are hints that are made in this dev diary about trade agreements that can be made here. Where did that go? Anyway, but yeah, here we go. Well, no, I'm talking about trade advantage and interacting here. Here we go. Here's the unequal treaties and making trade agreements with key importers. So that would mean what's going to come out in 1.9 is not only a rework of trade, but a rework of governmental approaches to trade. Because, for all the talk about, the free market was vital to the 19th century, how dare we have something that doesn't show the free market is the best thing in the world? Let me give you a couple of examples of free market that wasn't in play, that made a huge economic advantage for major countries. The unequal treaties with China. Yeah, about those. Well, they opened up China to trade. Well, in terms that were very favorable to the nations that had those unequal treaties, Britain foremost among them. Those treaties exploited China terribly and benefited England greatly. It was not free trade in the classical sense of the term. It was free trade, as if you don't trade this way, it's going to cost you. With our, yeah, when yeah, opium wars, man. Anyway, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're free to buy all the opium we want to sell you. We're opened up your market to our trade. You're going to buy some drugs. Yeah. No. Bad. But government involvement. So there, classical economics. Ha ha. I laugh at you. Anyway, well, at least neoclassicism. Come on, we've learned. The classic guys maybe didn't know, but the neoclassicists, come on, we know way better. Look at your economic history. Anyway, so we're also going to see tariffs and subventions really make a difference, and we can do more than just say, well, you're going to either a tariff on the good or a subsidy on the good. Now you can say, hey, let's have a tariff on exports and a tariff on imports. So that way, you normally use either we're going to export it or we're going to import it. Which is it? Well, what if you want to do neither? What if you want to make sure that all of this stuff that you're making stays here? Like all of my artillery needs to stay here, and we need to build my local industry and not import everything from Prussia because I'm France and I'm about to have a war with them, and I better have my own artillery industry here. So you can build up autarky for the various goods that you think are strategically important. Cloth, I don't care, but artillery, ammunition, oh yeah, we need that here. So you can do that now with what they're going to be doing in 1.9. And I mean, can we just get a slider? I know it's going to have little tick marks on it that go, but do we need to have all these clicky things, or are you still trying to get this ready for release on console? And that's how you're going to do it on console. But let me tell you what, with my console controller, I can still go, bit, 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 hold down one button and go bit, bit, bit with my little thing, or hold down a different button and go bit, bit, bit with the. It can be done. You can hold two buttons. You can hold two things. I don't know. Anyway, console compatibility, right on. Anyhow, this looks really cool, and I'm very heartened by it. And that's why I'm not making a mod to impact the entire world economy, because even though it's unplayable in the late game in Victoria 3 as it is now in 1.8.6, this looks like it's going to make some very important changes for 1.9, and even more important in 1.9.1, because, whoa, that's going to be the most important patch after this one here. And 1.9.2 is going to be really big, but yeah, you know how it is. But yeah, this looks like it's going to be a really cool thing to have in the game, that we're going to have more flexibility diplomatically and economically as we deal with, well, the world market and the complete revision we're going to see on it. So if I play Victoria 3 again between now and the release of 1.9, I probably will. I'll just lump it and know that I'm going to have a lot of extra tools at the end of the game, but I'll have a lot more people to make them with, and my game should run a little faster because I won't have a lot of people doing things. But you're still here? Well, let me tell you a little bit more about why the game makes a lot of tools at the end, and why I may still do an economic workover after 1.9 releases. I just want to wait for it to release because they're going to change all the files. If you look in the industry file for tools, there's an AI value equals 2000 with a little hashtag, tools are important. We need to make sure they make them. Okay, there's no other AI value for any other industry. Drove me insane. That's why they're making so many tools, because, like, what's important to make? Tools. Well, make them. So if that's still there after 1.9, if that little hashtag tools is there for the, and no other industry is being pushed that way, I'll have to go in and change the various production methods and buildings and things so the game will build in a more diverse portfolio. Make sure that happens. Yeah, AI value is vastly underused in vanilla Victoria 3, and I think that leads to a lot of problems. AI value helps the AI determine what it needs to make, and if you put multiple AI values on things, then it will branch out and actually build more engines, more steel, more other things. But that's also hampered by the fact that the prices are fixed. And I really hope this changes that, or at least allows a better variation in pricing, because if a good can only go down to 75% of its original price, it can still be very productive there, and especially if it's coupled with an AI value, it'll just go get made ad infinitum. I want it to be where if you start making more goods, this punishes you if you make too many, and that your AI stops making them. But that also it forces more flexibility of prices within the game, because they did describe this as a zero-sum game. You You can't make your goods cheaper and somebody else also make their goods cheaper, and then everyone in the world make the same good cheaper, and then everybody has same cheapiness. It needs to be where, like, hey, mine are more cheap than yours. It doesn't matter how cheap you made them. If mine are more cheap, I'll still outsell you and make these things unprofitable, unproductive relative to what I've got. And unless you adopt the same high tech methods, you're not going to be able to catch up to me, Jack. I want to see that. And I think I will. But if I don't, then I got to go in there and start jinking around with the prices, and that's just that's ugh. I don't want to do that because that's hard coded in the game, and anything I do will be a bolt on. I want this to really revise things to where it it does make it where production has an impact on price, and we get those global markets brought together and such. And okay, I think I'm running out of steam now. Ironic. I stopped using the Steam webs pages and I'm looking at the Paradox page. I have run out of steam. A dad joke and I didn't even know about it. And I hope you have enjoyment with Victoria 3. I've got my mod list. It's going to be the JSON file will be on my Discord server. The actual list of all the mods I'll link below. And then, yeah, until next time, be good to each other. Like, comment, subscribe. Watch some nice relaxing videos of relaxing things and enjoy who you are, because you're awesome. You're awesome. I got nothing else to say. I should probably hit the button that stops recording at this time. I might wind up cutting myself in the middle of a sentence if I'm not careful, because that can